right. Thank you. Thank you guys for joining us. My name is Maurice Velasquez, and this is the Winning in the Workplace podcast. We do this every week. Right now, we're doing it on Fridays, early morning, 8:15, and it's going to be probably about a 20-minute at max show. And this is where we cover everything to do with how to be a great leader and how to be a great manager. And that's actually going to be our topic. It's going to be our initial topic for today. Is we're going to be discussing what is a leader and what is a manager. There tends to be a lot of confusion around that, okay? But before we get started, I want to give you guys my website. It's mauricetraining.com. On it, you'll find an incredible amount of resources, a lot of free material. Click on resources and you'll find not only my podcast, but downloaded files. And that's also the portal to my video library. We are adding at least 2 videos per month. And in the next 60 days, today we are in March of 2023. In the next 2 months, actually, we're going to be populating the video library with an enormous amount of courses, material, podcasts, coaching sessions. Be on the lookout. You get a 7-day trial. If you want it a little longer, let me know. I'll give you a code for it. And if you want to look at the different plans on how to subscribe, it's all there. So the website is mauricetraining.com. Another way to get to the library, type in winningintheworkplace.com. That'll send you directly to the library menu to where you can actually subscribe. And inside of it, we also have a fantastic management series, which we call Management in Movies. Type in managementinmovies.com and it'll bring you to that. It's a fantastic series. It's probably our favorite. It's our most watched series. It is 20 short sessions of using movies to teach specific areas and skills in management. You'll enjoy it. You'll love it. It's 2.5 hours if you watch them all back to back. It's like a good movie, but they're in short 3-minute, 5-minute, 12-minute segments. And we cover movies like The Irishman, A Bridge on the River Kwai, Apollo 13, Saving Private Ryan, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. They're great. There's 3 on Chernobyl that you guys will really like. And we have great titles like When to Speak Up and When to Be Quiet, How to Give My Supervisors Bad News that I'm trying to not cause problems around, or how do I go and tell my employees, my teams, my direct reports bad news? How do I give bad news, especially when I don't agree with the decision that was made? Okay, so we cover some really good topics. How to complain when you're a manager, okay? What are the key things to make sure people are using processes and procedures right? We get into personalities, we get into conflict management, and we use movies to help you resonate better with it. Moneyball. How to hire properly, Life is Beautiful, how to train people better. It's 6 seasons, total 2.5 hours. Go watch it at winningintheworkplace.com, also at Management in Movies. All right, let's dive into our topic. Let's take a look at this little short video from one of my favorite Disney movies, The Aristocats.
Lafayette. Hey, Lafayette. Lafayette.
Well, I'm right here.
Listen. Wheels approaching.
Oh, Napoleon, went on bet 6 tires today. Chased 4 motor cars and a bicycle and a scooter.
Hush your mouth. It's a motorcycle. 2-cylinder, chain drive, 1 squeaky wheel on the front, it sounds like. Now, you go for the tires, and I'll go right for the seat of the problem.
How come you always grab a tender part for yourself?
'Cause I outrank you, that's why. Now, stop beating your gums and sound the attack. That's mess call.
Made a mess of it, huh?
You can be replaced, you know.
Okay, let's charge.
Wait a minute. I'm the leader. I'm the one that says when we go. Here we go. Charge!
It is one of my favorite episodes, one of my favorite scenes. Of course, it's humorous, it's comical, but there's a lot of truth behind it. And did you notice that in it, the one that was the taller dog, the bigger dog, he kind of peppered every once in a while that, hey, you can be replaced. And obviously he was the leader. And when he told him, look, and he sounded the alarm and he took off, he stopped him and said, oh, wait a minute, I'm the leader in charge. I usually use that whenever I say, all right, so I'm going to a meeting and I say, all right, can we start the meeting? And somebody will say, yeah, let's get started the meeting. I say, hold on. I'm the leader. I'll say when we start the meeting. Start the meeting. And of course, everybody laughs because we've already watched this and they know that I'm joking at it. But there's a lot of truth to this, okay? There's a lot of confusion about what is a leader and what is a manager. There's a lot of mixed messages that we give in corporate America that I think is causing a lot of confusion around what is the role of a manager, what is the role of a leader, and how can we help managers become better leaders. And that's really what we want. We want all team members in our companies at all different levels of the organization to be great leaders, okay? But yet, we oftentimes, corporate America right now is adapting or has adapted a very confusing message in which we pitch leadership with management because it's very prevalent. And if you think that it's just me, I'm kind of making it up or that I'm just interpreting, I am very open to being corrected. I don't have any problem with that, okay? But I see it all the time. Let me show you what that looks like, all right? If you do a simple search on Google and you type leader or manager, then you click on images. Even if you don't click on images, you will find a lot of articles that pitch leadership versus management. All right. But then if you click on images, you'll get a lot of images that graphically show you the differences between being a manager and being a leader. Because I don't want you guys to think I'm making it up. It's very prevalent. Companies have spent a lot of money designing these graphs, and they build entire programs and entire narratives around the idea that we really should not be managers in our approach. We should be leaders. Okay. Don't be a manager. Okay, you don't want to micromanage your people. You want to be a leader. You want to think big. You want to be motivating. And we'll break that down in our talk today. But that's the confusing part. But first, let's take a look at some of those samples. Here's one that shows that a leader is one that gets in front, whereas the manager is the one that gets behind the impact of a meeting. You kind of look at it and go, yeah, man, you got to get in front. You got to be a leader. You don't want to be a manager. You don't want to be sitting in the back and tell people what to do. I mean, come on, you don't want to be like the boss, and that's how the narrative goes. That message is clear. A leader is one that gets in front. The manager is one that gets behind and kind of pushes. Do you see the difference? All right, here's another one. A leader is one that pulls everybody up. The manager is the one who you can tell very proudly and arrogantly sits at the top and waits for others to come to him or her. All right. So it's clear. This is really clear. You really want to be the leader on the left. You do not want to be the manager on the right. I'm showing you how it's mostly presented in corporate America. And you hear it in podcasts, you hear it in seminars. TikTok is very riddled with videos comparing how you should be a leader and how you should not want to be a manager. Let me show you one more. Here's another one, leader and a manager. It can be clear that the message is received loud and clear. Being a leader about things is good. In other words, if your approach is that of a leader, that's good. But if you're being a manager about it, that's not so good. If you're approaching things like a leader, that's what you want to be. But if you're approaching the management of people, the leading of people, the managing of projects like a manager, well, that's not as good. And again, let me hear from you. If you think I'm misinterpreting the narrative out there, I'm very open to seeing otherwise, but it seems to be a consistent message. And I want to challenge that narrative. I mean, you'll find that a lot of what we do here at our company, we tend to challenge myths about leadership, tend to challenge myths about manager, because I believe if those myths or those wrong concepts get into our head, then those wrong concepts are the very ones that are going to keep us from being excellent at our jobs and excellent at our leadership, because we have a wrong categorization, because we've told ourselves certain things about who we are and what it means to be a leader or a manager. And if those classifications are incorrect, then we're going to confuse ourselves and we're going to confuse our people. Let me give you a comparison. Would you ever say you want to be a great athlete. You don't just want to be a good pitcher. Would you ever say that? You would never say that. You would never compare and tell a pitcher that, look, you don't want to be a good pitcher. Okay? Or no, better yet, it goes like, you don't want to be a pitcher. You want to be an athlete. I mean, an athlete is one that thinks of sportsmanship, thinks of big picture. You would never describe it that way. You would never say this. You would never say, be an athlete. Don't be a first baseman. Those are two totally different things. Whenever we compare leadership versus management, or management versus leadership, it's really like comparing apples and oranges. It's like comparing apples and pizza or apples and lasagna. It's a totally different thing altogether. You cannot compare leadership with management. Again, you would never, let me give you another example. You would never compare and say, you want to be a good athlete. Okay, you want to be an athlete. You don't want to be an outfielder. No, for those of you that are logged in and can see the slide deck that I'm showing you, you'll notice that the items in the left side say athlete, athlete, athlete. That's the comparison. But on the right side is pitcher, first baseman, and outfielder. See, those are two different things. Being an athlete is a certain behavior, a certain approach that describes a certain role that you have. But being a first baseman, being a pitcher, being an outfielder is a type of athlete. Soccer players are athletes. Football players are athletes. First basemen, gymnasts, pole vaulters. You pick all the different types of athletes. They're all athletes. So you can't compare being an athlete to being a football player because they're two different things. A football player is a type of athlete. Same thing when it comes to leadership and management. Managers are a type of leaders, and there's different types of leaders. You have executive leaders, you have middle manager leaders, you have frontline supervisor leaders, you have frontline team leaders, you have frontliners themselves that need to be leaders in their job. So you see, when we classify and say you have to be a leader, you don't want to be a manager, you're comparing two totally different things. Whereas what we should be saying is you're either a good leader or a bad leader in your respective area as an executive, as a middle manager, as a frontliner, or as a frontline team leader, because all those are leaders. But if you pitch leadership against manager, what do you do with the fact that well over 95% of our workforce at leadership positions are managers? Let me show you another example. This video I use in my workshops all the time. I use it because it's a really good video where I show how managers tend to come up with cheesy ideas to incorporate engagement and hopefully build a happy environment. So I use this video a lot to show how the cheesiness of things, how we should not default to cheesy ideas and cheesy initiatives. We need to really deal with serious problems and actually be problem solvers. However, in using this video, you'll notice that there is the comparison between the leader and the manager. And again, I'm pointing out to you just to show you how prevalent this is, because this company spent a lot of money on this, at least to pay the actors. Okay, here, let me show it to you.
Hi, I'm a leader.
And I'm a manager.
So manager, what do you have there?
Well, you know, leader, how the economy's been really challenging lately,
Yeah,
and morale's been so low at work.
absolutely.
Well, I invented an instant morale booster for my team.
Really? Wow, that could change business.
I know it. I'm very excited. Every one of my employees is going to get one of these free of charge, I might add. I call it the Smile-O-Matic. Want to see how it works?
Smile-O-Matic, yeah, absolutely. That's exciting.
It's very exciting. Okay, the Smile-O-Matic, you just wrap it around your head like this. And voila, voila, instant happy employees. No matter what's going on in the economy, you're going to have happy employees every day, leader. Hey, Bob, sorry to hear about the layoff. Hey, Sally, sorry to hear your budget got cut.
Shouldn't our people smile though because they actually are happy?
I don't understand.
Yeah, I didn't think you did.
All right, the message is very clear. The manager is the cheesy guy. The manager is the one that just does not get it. The leader, however, is the one that has got it. All right. And the message is just too clear. The reason why I fear that this is very discouraging is because managers understand that they're managers. My job is a branch manager. I'm the manager of this team. I'm the manager of an office. I'm a manager of a department. I'm a middle manager, a manager of the intake department. I'm the manager of the engineering group. Millions of people in this country have the title of manager, and they're getting paid as managers. And they're supposed to be managers. And they're supposed to watch out for the details. And they're supposed to check up on people's work. And they're supposed to hold folks accountable. And they're supposed to dive in deep and ask folks, hey, what's your goals for this week? Hey, how did you do this week? And they're supposed to sit with their team members and talk about the details. And I'm sorry to say, it sometimes feels like you're micromanaging because you're asking about the details. Now, we don't want to, quote, micromanage, but it's going to feel that way because I have to ask, what did you do yesterday? Your numbers aren't right. That's what managers do. That's not what executives do. Executives don't operate in the same level of detail, but they're still managers. They're still leaders. A good manager who is a good leader dives into the details, talks about the process, talks about the procedures, gets into the quagmire, jumps into the work and asks the tough questions. Whereas the executive operates at a little higher level, but they're both leaders. It's just that one of them is at a different level than the other. So the frustrating thing is that we see, for example, in this image, this lady who's frustrated. Why is this manager frustrated? They're frustrated because my title is that of a manager, but I am constantly being told to not be a manager, but instead be a leader. So I guess managers can't be leaders. And that's the way we talk. So I'm encouraging you to change the way you describe this. What you want to tell your managers is be a great leader by being a great manager. If you're talking to an executive, you tell them be a great leader by being an executive and act like an executive in your role. If you're an executive and you start diving into the details of things, you're not being a good leader. Even if you are thinking about the motivating and the inspiring things, if you're the executive and you're diving into the details where the manager should live, but you cannot get out of the details, well, you're not being a good leader as an executive because you're diving in as a manager. You're not staying in your lane, man. If you're a middle manager, you are a great leader if you act like a manager. If you practice the habits and disciplines of a manager. If you're a frontline supervisor, you are a great leader if you actually act like a supervisor. And if you practice the skills and the tools and the disciplines of frontline supervisors. So if you break your rank, if you break your role, if you break your sphere of responsibilities, you're not a good leader. As you want to change your language, you're being an effective leader or you're being an ineffective leader as an executive, as a middle manager, and as a frontliner. So what I want to encourage you is to look at it this way. For those of you that are driving or those of you that are listening to me, audio, think of three circles. The circle at the top of the executives, then the middle managers, and then the frontline managers. You want to think of leadership with this framework. And this is the beginning of what we call here at our company, our alignment model. If you can align the roles and understand the dynamics of the different roles and the way that problems and solutions and visions goes around these three circles, you will increase your organizational alignment and you'll allow all your team members to step up to leadership because now we understand. Top circle is the leadership of executives. The middle managers is the second circle. Those are the leaders in the middle. And then the frontliners, those are the leaders in the front. So they're all leaders. What you're appealing, what you're asking them to do is be great leaders in your respective role. And that's where it begs the question, well, what are the roles? And this is where leadership can be distinguished as being effective or ineffective. So let's take a look at it. The executives, in order for the executives to be great leaders, they have to consider two things, the big picture of things or the day-to-day. That's where you differentiate. In order for executives to be great leaders, they should be very highly involved in thinking big picture about things. They speak in terms of the vision of the company. Where do we want to be when we open up our New Orleans office? Where do we want to be when we open up our Mobile office? What are the percentage? What's the outcome that we want to see? So executives do a fantastic job of leadership when they define and they speak to outcomes. They speak to the vision of things. They motivate people on the big picture of things. And then they expect folks to provide outcomes, to provide results. But they do everything possible to not dive into the details and get into the day-to-day operation. Now, there are some areas where the executives have to get into the day-to-day, and we'll cover that in different shows. But in comparison, as you see on the screen, their percentage of time and the percentage of involvement should be very high at the big picture and motivational, and they should be less in the day-to-day. So just the other day, I was working with a client, and I watched her work for about 3 days, and she is a senior level executive. And I encouraged her. She asked me how I thought she was doing a great job, but I think your role a little unclear. You're a senior leader. You're a senior executive. Okay. You walk around way too much talking about the day to day, and you're touching on things that you should be really allowing your middle managers to be the ones that bring those up. If you have an issue with how such and such department is not working, then you need to go interact with those managers, and you need to watch those managers be the ones that bring up the issues. So you're walking around that you're doing is fantastic, very regularly, and you connect with a lot of people. But when you're talking to people, you're acting like a manager because you're holding folks accountable. You're asking very detailed day-to-day questions, and then watch your managers. And she said, yeah, they just won't step up. And I'm like, is it that they're not stepping up, or they're not going to compete against you in the hallway? If you're stepping into that area of day-to-day management, you're not being a good leader. And boy, she said, whoa, hold on. I am being a good leader. I'm walking around and I'm giving everybody motivation. I said, yes, you are, but you're diving into the details. And in that, when you do that, you cease to be a good leader in your role as executive. Do you see how you have to differentiate it so that people can see, okay, all right, so what do? I said, well, you need to be more motivating. And then those tough questions that you're asking your frontliners, you need to be asking your managers to jump in, okay? And you need to be asking your managers to dive into those questions, and you ask them, and you let them go find out, and then come back and report to you. And there's a lot of reasons why, of course, she and other executives tell me why that's hard to do, and they can't get their managers to step up. But to keep it very basic for right now, that's the role of the executives in their leadership. Now let's look at the middle managers. The middle managers, you'll notice that the percentages change. The middle managers should be very big picture oriented, very high level oriented. They should be very motivating. They should give a lot of direction. In other words, they should be very similar to the executives in the big picture of things. But notice their day-to-day involvement. Middle managers should be much more involved in the day-to-day conversations and in the day-to-day business and dialogues and interactions, and how they dive into the details. They dive into the details, the executives come out of the details. And if they both do that, they're both being great leaders in their respective roles. So if an executive tells managers, hey, you really need to stop diving in, your people feel like you're macromanaging, be careful. That's what you as an executive should be doing. But as a middle manager, I have to go dive into the details. I have to go find out what's going on because you hold me accountable every week of why these numbers aren't right. I got to go figure out why. If they think that's too micromanagement, look, you need to just be worried about the results. As long as I'm not having people fired, as long as I'm not ruining the culture, as long as I'm not losing folks left and right, look at the results. If I'm able to keep a very positive culture and I'm able to produce the results and people are staying, I'm retaining employees, I have to be the one to challenge them on the day-to-day, sometimes hour by hour of their work in order to get the numbers and the results that you want. See, that's a great conversation between a manager and executive, and they're both being great leaders, but in their respective areas, in their respective responsibilities. Let's dive in. Let's go into frontliners. The frontliners, you'll notice they're just as well equally leaders, but notice the difference, okay? Their big picture is a lot smaller percent of their time and attention. They are not talking to their people in terms of big picture things. Why? Because that's not my job. My job is to make sure hour by hour, minute by minute, day by day, I am focusing, I'm helping, I'm supporting, I'm diving in, I'm rolling up my sleeves. Why? Because I'm at the front lines with them. I'm in the battle with them. I am one of those in that graph where I'm at the front with them. But the middle manager is more like in the middle, maybe towards the back. The executive should be more towards the back, cheering them on to greatness, and go up to the front and cheer them on to greatness. Okay. So it's a shared responsibility roles. But if we get this dynamic that I'm showing you guys here confused, then the manager is going to be confused. Everyone's going to be confused, and we're going to create a lot of confusion in the ranks. And you're not going to see your manager step up to great leadership because don't think that they can be great leaders unless they stop being managers. Okay, fine. So then a manager starts becoming a great leader, and no sooner or later they go to a workshop because they were told you got to go increase your leadership skills, and they tell them how to be motivating, how to think of outcomes, how to get out of the details, how not to be micromanaging, how not to ask for the details all the time, how to, and so they just got taught how not to be managers. So they come back to the office and then they start practicing the leadership skills. The numbers start going down because now no one's really watching the hen house. Okay. The cat's out, the mice play. It's kind of gotten a little loose. And then the very executives that sent that manager to go learn leadership skills. Now the confusion is my people are not performing. Yeah, because you took your foot off the gas. Okay. And the person that was there that kept everybody supported, encouraged, motivated at that granular level, all of a sudden learn leadership skills to get them out of that. Okay. Very dangerous. This is one of the biggest reasons why in corporate America we're not well aligned, and we cannot encourage managers to step up to leadership. All right. So let's dive into our toolbox. Here in this segment, I usually bring up different tools that I use or different tools that are out there in the market that I have found very effective, very useful. I would say half the time when I refer tools, you may have to pay a fee to somebody else because the tool is really good. It costs money, or it may be a tool that I have and it's either for fee or it's free. So that's what we cover in this segment. So I want to show you a tool, a very powerful tool that we use to determine and help folks understand their leadership skills and their management skills all in one report. All right. That report is what's called the Work of Leaders Profile. So yeah, it's a great for leaders. And what it is, it's a fantastic layout of the many different skills and responsibilities and abilities of leaders at different levels. If you're an executive leader, you want to know if you're good at these areas that a great leader should bring to the table. Let's take a look at some of them. How to remain open, how to prioritize the big picture, how to be adventurous, how to speak out, how to seek counsel, how to explore implications, how to explain rationale, how to structure your messages, how to exchange perspectives, how to be receptive, how to be expressive, how to be encouraging, how to be driven, how to take initiative, how to provide a game plan, how to analyze in depth, how to address problems, and how to offer praise. Let me tell you, this report is fantastic. It is excellent. I use it all the time. Whenever I'm told, hey, look, we're thinking about promoting Mary. Hey, let's do the survey. Let's ask her to fill out these questions and get a read for where she's at and identify where her strengths and weaknesses are in her role as a leader. Hey, let me ask you, Mary, what job? So she's going to be a branch manager. Oh, she's going to be a middle manager. Perfect. We need to know if she has these qualities and then whether she can use them in her area. Oh, no, wait, no, we're talking about Susie. Susie's going to be a frontline leader. Hey, use this report and get an assessment on her leadership skills. All right. So what the report does, it lays out for you Lori's strengths, and it'll come out at the end. It will show you the 3 areas where Lori is the strongest, but it will also show you the 3 areas where she needs the most work. It lays these positives and these areas for improvement very well laid out on page 20 and 21. But interesting, before you get to page 20 and 21, what this report does, it lays out a skill by skill and comparison. So for example, if you see it on the screen, it looks at the first one about remaining open and prioritizing the big picture. So it compares. All right. Does Susie remain open, or does Susie seek closure. Now, it presents both of those are as important. There are times when you need to seek closure, and there's times when you need to remain open. Those are very good. But the question is which one does she gravitate to the most? So in this particular case, it tells us that Susie remains open. Okay, now let's look at the next category, prioritizing details or prioritizing big picture. See, here's a fantastic example of the difference. If we're going to hire Lori to be a middle manager, do we want her to focus on big picture or do we want her to focus on the details? Well, if she's a middle manager, she better be focusing on the details. But if she doesn't perceive details to be as important, because look at the graph, it shows that she's a big picture leader. Well, then this big picture leader is going to have a problem if her role is a middle manager or frontline manager. This is a fantastic report. So you got to be able to sit with Lori and say, all right, Lori, we got to talk. You're so driven by big picture that you don't see the details, or you're just not good at details. All right. And then you had that conversation. But by diving into each one of those 18 areas, you can have a fantastic conversation. So I highly encourage you to use this report. It's called Profiles of a Leader. You can get it from me. I don't have it on my website yet. If you want it, send me an email. Let me send it to you. It's $75, $85 per person. If you want to do a group, let me know. We can give you group discounts. It's a fantastic report. All right. So let's get into our treasure chest. What I mean by that is really our bookshelf. There's a very famous line. I agree with it. Okay. Leaders are readers. I fully agree with that. I really do. If you want to be a leader, you have to be reading other people's work. And you have to learn the language that was said 30 years ago, 40 years ago in your industry. And you want to learn what the conversation is previously in the last 5-10 years from what was written, the journals and the publications. And you also want to be reading of what the latest trends are. So if you're not keeping up with that, you're going to probably slow yourself down because you're not using the language, the vernacular, and the skills and tactics that are out there. If you want to be a great leader, you have to be a great reader. I'm shocked at how many of my clients are just ferocious readers. They'll read a book every 2 weeks. I know a colleague, he will read easily 2 to 3 books a month. I wish I could do that. I highly encourage that. I highly encourage that you be a very broad reader and even read things that are not in favor of your view. It's very important. I tend to have a rule that for every 2 books or every 2 articles that I read that favor my position, I go and look for the opposing view. Okay. And I make myself very familiar with what the other side says about itself and then what the other side says about what I favor. As a matter of fact, whenever I see on Facebook or LinkedIn, I see articles that I like and I read it, I then go read the comments, and I'm usually looking for the negative comments about the topic. Why? Because as a reader, you don't want to create a chorus chamber in your head to where you're only reading things that favor you. You want to read things that favor you and what your position is, but you, in order to be good at that, you have to learn the opposing view. And you have to be able to articulate the opposing view as if you were that opposing person. I really believe what C.S. Lewis said. If you're not able to articulate the opposing person's view that is contrary to your view extremely well, then you probably don't even understand your view very well. That's a powerful statement. I read that somewhere. Okay. All right. And his point is very good. If you believe in A and you don't go read somebody who believes in negative A or Z, it's not the whatever the opposite of A is, okay, and you're not able to articulate what they are saying about themselves and against your view, you're probably not going to be very fair balance about the topic, and you're going to be more weighted and more biased. So look, I'm trying to send the right message. We have to be readers. We have to be very well read. Like I said, in the past, last 50 years, last 5 years, and the last 5 minutes. For example, if you're in the leadership and management world, okay, this right here is a treasure chest of classics, okay? Dale Carnegie. If you're reading Stephen Covey, then you're in the same trend. But Stephen Covey was 30, 40 years ago. And by that, I am not in any way negating it. I have basically built my entire repertoire of skills and my concepts around Steve Covey's 7 Habits. That's one of the first books I read. But as I read his, somebody gave me this series here, And of course, Dale Carnegie, he said all this in the 1920s and the 1930s. All right. So it's fascinating when you read what was being said in the 1920s and 30s. It's still so applicable today. Then you compare it to what Stephen Covey's saying. Then you read what Jim Collins said in Good to Great. Then you read what Jim Collins said 20 years later after the fall of 2008, and you understand the historical and you see the narratives change. It gives you a perspective that will help you in day-to-day meetings, because you can see trends and you can see narratives that are changing, and you become a better leader because you're understanding the changing dynamics of what's happening in culture and the different approaches and tools and different dynamics that are being presented. So you got to be really well read. Here's my caution, is that as leaders, we tend to, at any level, okay, but executives tend to do this most, okay, because they read a lot, they like this book, they go to a conference, they were introduced to a book, and they read it, or they're just good readers, and they like this book, so they pass it out, they buy 15 copies of it, and then they send it to their team, their branch managers, their middle managers, and say, guys, I want us to read this book. This is a fantastic book. I want us to implement some of these things, and I want us to learn how to use this model. All right. So everybody goes ahead and reads them, and the middle managers realize, okay, chapter 3 through 9 is talking about a very detailed process, and we're going to have to really challenge how we're doing things and adapt some things. So the conversations begin. All right. So they may be attempting to try this, and no sooner than you're in the third month of attempting this, that the individual that passed out the book now has gone to another conference, or he read about another book that he's reading, and he comes back and says, guys, I have this book. I want you to read it. And right there, unbeknown to them, they're sending shockwaves through their system. And the reason is because they are introducing another chapter 3 to 7 that has different tactics and different procedures and different that may be similar to what the previous book said, but they're different. So the managers are like, do we do this one or do we do this one? And no sooner are we having that conversation, and then, hey, y'all read this article. Hey, y'all read this article. Hey, y'all read this article. What we're doing is we're creating storming. We're storming the place where our boat is heading this way, and now we're creating storming. We're creating confusion, and people get discouraged about the fact that such and such is reading a lot. So I want to be careful that when I recommend books, I recommend it with that in mind. Do not take them and just push them to your people. You have to pace yourselves and determine what's our overall approach in creating organizational alignment around which books. Are we going to use Jim Collins? Then let's stick with Jim Collins. Are we going to adapt Crucial Conversations? Then let's use Crucial Conversations. Are we going to go with Buckingham, The First Break All the Rules? Then let's use that, and let's master that book, or let's master these two books, and let's make that part of our culture. Now, we can still read other books that complement that, but let's not be changing things all around based on the last books we read, because it tends to be more confusing. All right, having said that, I have two books that I recommend to everybody starting their journey of great leadership and great management. And let's start with the first book. It's The First Break All the Rules. It's a fantastic book. It was written by Marcus Buckingham. It's one of the first books that I was introduced when I came into management, and I found it to be extremely, extremely helpful. I'm going to even cheat for you. I think if you simply go to page 29, I believe it's page 29, and you're going to get the 12 habits of great managers. And what it is, it's a study of what the world's greatest managers do differently. I have built so much of my approach on this advice that James Buckingham and this team at the Gallup have put out. It's 12 items, but the 12 items that it identifies on chapter 1 and chapter 2 are 12 questions that identify the 12 habits that the greatest managers in the most successful companies do, whether they're a small team of 50 or whether they're great companies of 50,000 people. These 12 habits were introduced in this book back in around 1995, 1999. It has become a classic. It has become a standard in the industry. Those 12 questions, those 12 habits are pretty much the habits that all managers should implement. All right. So I encourage you to read it. The second book that I want to recommend is by the same team. It's The Manager. What's interesting about this is that this book was also published by the Gallup organization. So the folks that wrote this book, it's The Manager, it's the same company that wrote this one, First Break All the Rules. Different authors, but what the book does, it basically takes a 20-year journey, because this was the second book, It's a Manager, this one was published before COVID. So basically it says this: look, in your company, there's a primary reason why your company is not as aligned as it should be. There's a primary reason why your company is not as productive as it should be, and it's because it's the managers. You have to look at the managers, and I fully agree. The entirety of my leadership and management program is to recognize that the middle management teams, how they work with each other, is the very core of either the problems or the solutions. That's why this book takes a really healthy approach and says, do you want to understand why your people are leaving? I'll tell you why your people are leaving. It's the managers. You want to know why your people are not engaged? It's the managers. But he doesn't keep it at a negative level. He basically lays out the problem, and that is that we're ignoring the fact that we're not training our managers on management skills. What he points out is that we're training our managers on exclusively leadership skills, and we're not training them to master management skills, which is what we talked about earlier. All right. So then he basically asks the question, what's the solution? The solution is the managers. Who are the ones that are going to be able to turn everything around? It's the managers. Who are the ones that are going to be able to engage your entire teams to greatness and to action? It's the managers. And so in corporate America, what we've done is we've emphasized the up relationship, which is good, me and my supervisor, and then of course me and my team. All right. But the relationship that we don't emphasize as much is that of peers. Okay. So you have 4 peers, 4 managers, and this executive is trying to get their teams to work, but we become too turfial. We become too much of department defending teams. So the different departments aren't able to work together because the managers are not cross-department collaborating. All right. So the book really lays out this dynamic. It lays out what the 12 habits are that were first published in 1999, and it expands it more to the 2000s. So it really speaks to today. All right. So guys, I appreciate it. Hope you guys liked the show. The theme today was, what is the difference between a leader and a manager? Showed you a fantastic tool that you could use to evaluate your people's leadership skills, and that will help you determine whether they're really going to be good at the executive level, at the middle level, or at the frontline levels based on their strengths and weaknesses from that report. And now that you know the different types of leaders and what their function is, you should be able to speak to the issues a lot better. And then, of course, we ended up with 2 great books. First, How to Break the Rules, and secondly, It's the Manager. All right, so let me invite you to please go to my website, mauricetraining.com. You can also find me on Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter. All right, and then the 2 other websites that I mentioned to you earlier, go to winningintheworkplace.com. That's my library. My video library. It's got great subscription programs for individuals, very inexpensive. Low is $15 or even $10 a subscription. And then also go to managementandmovies.com. Look, if you go into Winning in the Workplace, you get Management and Movies free. Either one. You want to go in there because that's my library. But if you want to find it easy, Management and Movies, that's the series where we actually teach leadership and management skills using movies. Hope you enjoyed. Guys, thank you so much for joining us. Come back next week. We'll continue with another good topic. Send me your feedback, participate, and reach me out at maurice@teamrealworld.com or find me on my website, mauricetraining.com. Thank you guys for coming.